Welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. I'm Eric Byron, and it is my privilege to host this show where we get to talk to folks from all over the world who are education thought leaders and innovators. We are going to hear inspiring stories from educators and EdTech founders and AI experts and others who are fearlessly innovating and delivering unique learning experiences. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started.
And yet that is the very, very essence of what you need in those environments where you want problem solving, is people who are willing to go, I've got an idea, and not only have I got an idea, I'm going to make it, try it, build it, code it, whatever. And it's the ability to move somebody from that situation where I'm a failure to it failed. I didn't fail, it failed, and I'm willing to go again, or try it again, or build it again, or build it differently, or try something that you think is mental, but I think might just work. Because some of those mental ideas are the ones that are actually the best ones.
Ben Edmonds is an inventor and one of the most fun guests I've had on the show. He is passionate and interesting and entertaining to listen to. Ben has found a way to tap into a powerful dynamic of active learning and developing kids' creativity and problem-solving skills. Keep listening. Welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. I'm Eric Byron, and today's guest is Ben Edmonds. Ben is an inventor and entrepreneur with a 20-year career in product design and innovation, and he's now teaching kids design engineering and problem solving through what he describes as his greatest ever invention, the InventorClub, which offers both in-person workshops and online programs for kids 7 to 16 years old. Ben recently quit Dyson, where he worked in new product innovation for 10 years to focus on his own business. He's getting ready to launch a line of flat-packed furniture. And of course, he's also focusing on the InventorClub for kids, which continues to grow. So welcome to the show, Ben. It's been
Thanks fun. For having me.
You're a very busy guy. It's been tough trying to get you on the schedule here.
That is always the way, I'm afraid. Sorry. Yes. Just hopefully not being a busy idiot. That's my consistent goal. Is I am busy. I'm just trying not to be a busy idiot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So well, again, welcome, and well, tell me a little bit. Let's get into your background. You're an inventor. This is always fun to talk to somebody who's an inventor. So tell us about some things you've invented.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I mean, I was actually at Dyson for 12 and a half years. By the time I actually left, that's right. I normally just say that I was there for a decade or over a decade. It's just easier. So I worked there for a long time. But the nature of R&D at Dyson is that obviously not everything gets launched. So during my time there were 3 particular products that got launched. One fairly early on, which is a little tiny vacuum cleaner that got launched specifically for China. It was the smallest ever ball cylinder vacuum cleaner that they would call it. It's like one of the ones you like pull along, which was quite fun. I worked on that. I was working on the stability system and the chassis and stuff for that, which I ended up with a patent on that. So you might have seen that one. More recently, I developed this air purifier, which again was more specifically for sort of like Asia, so China, South Korea, those sorts of places. And that was like the class leading product that they'd ever done, which is really cool. Was getting 5-star reviews last time I checked in China. And it's a bit of a game changer because it's so incredibly quiet. That was the main thing about it. If you have a product that's really noisy, people will sort of turn it down because it's irritating. They'll turn it down, and then just turn it off. And then you sort of wasted your investment. So what I would rather do is make things that are quiet that people can use. So that was the kind of the game changing bit for that one. I loved the demo that we did for that one. We got it all working. We got it all working in the background. Went to do our review, and so did all the graphs on all the chat. And we said to James, right, cool, should we turn it on? And he said, oh yeah, I've always loved the bit where you get to turn the product on. And we just literally just rotated it because it was already on. It'd been on the whole time. And so it was that quiet. So that was really cool. But previous to Dyson, I worked in a couple of different companies, worked for a security company, which seemingly would be quite boring. But what's wonderful about security companies is that they make products that go onto everybody's doors. And you go through a lot of doors in your life. And so I constantly see the products that I made, like most weeks, which is really fun. You can go down any high street in the UK and certainly abroad as well. They took products over to America and to Australia, but certainly in the UK, any high street in the UK, you can see products that I designed, and there's a particular blue triangle that says Chubb on it, and there's a couple of patents on that we got. So that, yeah, in my professional career, that's largely the things that you might actually see. And then there's another company I worked for called Zyrotex, who pretty much no one's ever heard of, but we made enterprise storage systems, and essentially all those pictures of cats on vacuum cleaners and Charlie biting his finger and all that other madness doesn't exist if it can't be stored somewhere. And so we made the devices that everything was stored on that typically would just be in a bunker somewhere or under the sea. So no one's ever going to see any of that stuff, but I definitely worked on it.
Wow. All right. So I got an idea now, because you were talking about things that are quiet. So my problem with noisy is our air conditioner, but you can't just keep turning it down or turn it off, right? I live in Hong Kong. It's warm here.
Yeah, not
so what happens is, right, you turn the TV up, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah. And then your ears gradually get more deaf, and then it all levels out.
Right. And then my wife is yelling at me from the other room. Why is the TV on so loud? I'm like, oh, because I couldn't hear the voices over the air conditioner.
Precisely. So, we need to get away from making products that are noisy. That should be one of the primary things that we're trying to achieve. The collective we now. I don't like that. Yeah.
Great. So, it's all fascinating to me. I've always kind of wished I could claim I had invented something, but I've created some games, learning games. I guess I've created something, but I haven't really invented something. All right. You studied computer-aided design in college, a bachelor's degree, University of Portsmouth. And then from my impression here, you're one of these guys who's kind of a jack of all trades, digital and physical design. And you worked on some pretty high-tech stuff. Is there a particular area of product design that brings you the most joy? What gets you really excited?
I would say two particular things. One is just the early stage new product innovation bit, the making, the discovering. When you've got those really early things that are just at some point have just been an idea in your head, and they're like, could this even work? And then you put the stuff together and you fire it up, and then whatever happens, and that is so much of a buzz. That's just absolutely wicked. I love that stuff. Okay. But in addition, the other bit is standing in front of somebody that has never seen your thing before, and then you get to show them, you get to take them through that journey of what this thing could do for them, what's the benefit that they could have. And then if you've done it right, they're like, literally, take my money. That's the coolest, that's incredible. And then they're like, did you work on this? You're like, yeah, I designed it. So another thing that I did, I started a company making parts for classic cars. So I love classic minis. I've currently got 2. I've owned 8. And my 1-year renovation is a decade in. We'll get there at some point. Just too busy to get on with it. But I made these hinges to allow the bonnet to go vertical. So something about a classic mini, if anybody's ever worked under one, they'll know that not only is the car very short, but the bonnet only goes to 45 degrees and it's curved at the end. And it's essentially like a glorified razor blade. So everybody that's worked on a Mini has got this cut on the back of their head, and it's such a problem. It has a name. It's called the Marca Visigonis, after Alec, who designed the vehicle. And so I designed these hinges that allowed your bonnet to go completely vertical, which then alleviates not only that issue, but then you could have all the lights you need, because your bonnet is obviously casting a shadow where you're trying to work. You can do an engine replacement with the bonnet still attached. And I went on to sell that in 44 countries around the world, so some really obscure places. But the best bit about it was standing at a trade show with my car, with the things there, and people are like, what? It does what? And you're like, and you show them, and they're like, that's incredible, take my money. And that is just a wild buzz. I just absolutely love that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing that's never happened to me, Ben. I've never showed somebody something and had them say, here, take my money. I've had people go, ooh, that's cool, but I've never quite had anybody just want to throw money at me. But good for you.
It's fun. Yeah, well, it's a tangible demonstration that you've got it right. That they've. Yeah. Obviously, a lot of what I do is physical. So in that moment, you get to try it within a few seconds. You get to know if you like that thing or not. And usually, I don't want to do the demo. Like, I'll show you how it works, but I want to get your hands on it as quickly as possible, because I want to transfer my level of belief into your hands to the point where you pay me, because ultimately a lot of these things are businesses, they're not charities.
Yeah.
So it's about making some cash.
Cool. All right. Sounds like you are very good at what you do. Well, that's why you're on the show here, because
I'm all right. Yeah, I enjoy it a lot, and I think sometimes when you enjoy things a lot, you do it a lot, and then you get good at it. Like at uni, there were 44 of us in that year, and you make of things what you will, right? So I would stay after hours. I would dive into the software that we're working on. I would work extra. I would, did I get a first? No, I didn't get a first, because I had a very good time at university, an exceptional time. Could I have got a first? Definitely capable. But it's about work-life balance, isn't it? So, but yeah, I got absolutely stuck in, and importantly, I got my placement year. That was the killer moment, because getting to work at that security firm, it was such a small company that I got to work across the whole business. And so I got to see like every single element of the business and experience it, and also help to revolutionize it. Like there's a load of stuff that they simply didn't do. They didn't have 3D CAD there. They were doing everything in 2D, which is fine. I've done a lot of cool stuff in 2D. But the first meeting I sat in was a 3-hour meeting to discuss why these two holes hadn't lined up. And I'm like, guys, if you got 3D CAD, they're like, sure. Well, the big boys are talking right now.
Yeah.
I'm like, they would have solved the problem. And so I carried on doing everything I had to do, but I brought in let's say a dubious copy of a software program that I used in my lunchtimes, and I showed them what was possible. And then they're like, "Oh no, this is amazing!" And then they invested, and they didn't look back. They ended up with a couple of seats of it, and I personally was a social experiment there. So they didn't mean to get they'd historically had mechanical engineers, which are great and very logical and thought through and analytical, and they do everything properly, but it's all just a little bit boring. And so they took a punt on a product designer who also had a bit of mechanical knowledge to him. And so things started to get a bit more visually interesting, and we tried different things, and we were experimenting with different stuff. And it was good. It went well. They sold the business and made a profit and retired quite happily.
Good. Awesome. That's a great story. Speaking of stories, I want to hear the story of how the Inventor Club was born, because I love this. I know we talked previously, but I want you to share it here on
Sure.
on this, because it started with your kids, right?
Yeah, it was an absolute accident. I didn't mean to do it. So my kids at the time were in mainstream education here in the UK, and they were telling me tales of the kind of DT stuff they were doing in school, design technology stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, it sounded pretty rubbish. So I was like, oh, I wonder if I can help here. So I went in to do some stuff in the school, and I found out that not only was I quite good at it, but I really enjoyed it. There was again that buzz, that thing I mentioned before about the you stand in front of somebody, something cool happens, and you get that sort of you get that moment, you get that feeling, that excitement from somebody else. I'm like that they won't pay me any money, but I was like, this is really cool. I really enjoy this. And so it was around that time that my wife had been speaking with somebody locally here about this idea of home education. And we'd never really, we'd come across it in America. We lived in America for a little bit, and we'd come across it there, but it just wasn't a thing here. And at the time, certainly in the UK, people didn't talk about it. Like, what do you mean you're taking your children out of school? Like, are you mental? That's career suicide. And 7 years later now, I could talk about that at great length, because I am deeply passionate about it now. But what occurred was this. I live my life quite publicly on social media. I found that if I tell people what I do, they seem to really enjoy it, and then they want to give me money for stuff. And bills in the UK are outrageously expensive. There's a theme of money consistently here. You'll notice that. I do enjoy sort of the entrepreneurship side of stuff. We could talk about that more. So I put a post on Facebook about some stuff that I was going to do with my girls. And then within a couple of weeks, that post went a bit mental, and about 300 families across the UK were like, this is wicked, where do we sign up? I'm like, that is not the plan. But what if it was the plan? And at the time I was running my mini business, and I was working at Dyson in the daytime, and then I was going to do this stuff for my kids after hours and whatnot. So life was already quite hectic. But I was like, you know what, let's see what happens. Let's see. So look, I was like, look, I don't know how to do this online at the minute. Let's just do this in person. So local people, anybody interested. And so I got 16 kids signed up pretty rapidly, and I split them into two sessions of 8. And then I'd let them come around my house because I'd already split we live unconventionally, okay? So I'd already split my living room in half, and at one end was a full workshop. So I've got an industrial laser cutter in there. I've got a workbench with a photographic studio. I've got 859 sheets of cardboard and just all manner of madness back there. And then I have whiteboards everywhere anyway, because I already have them. And then I just changed a few of them. I just set them a little bit lower so that the younger kids could reach, and then wheeled them in. But what I did initially was I made this hydraulic bridge. I'm like, everybody needs to make something cool, don't they? So I'll make something cool, and then we can all like follow that. So I made this hydraulic bridge, and you could push a thing and it would open, and it looked wicked and it worked brilliantly. And then I made a load of instructions. And then basically I just herded these children for 6 weeks to instructions. And it wasn't a great deal of fun for me. And it wasn't brilliant for them because they were at different spaces and different places. And some didn't even want to make a bridge, and some just needed to stop putting their arm in the hot melt glue. And it was just madness. And basically we got to the end of that project, and some had finished it, some hadn't. And then some stayed on and some definitely left. I've got a few more in. And then life at Dyson was mad, and there was a knock at the door on a Thursday. I'm like, oh, I wonder who that is. Open the door. There's 8 eager children waiting to come in and work on this project that I've definitely planned. I have not planned this. What am I going to do? Yes, I've planned this, kids. In you come. Welcome. And so I was just like, oh my gosh. Okay, look, here we go. I just put a problem on the board. I just put a box and a step. And I said, how do we get that box up that step? And as all school kids do these days, they immediately like, well, what's in the box? They started asking all the questions. How do we do this? What do we do? I'm like, well, what do you think we should do? What do you have? What could you do? What are all the questions you could ask about this? And I said to them, look, I'm not going to do this for you. I'm actually going to step back. I'm just going to just slightly guide you if you need it. But you collectively, age 7 to 11, 12-ish, are going to figure this out. And it was glorious. It was so good. People are inherently creative. It is not true to say that people are not creative. That is absolutely a lie perpetuated by art classes at school, where you're told to do a lifelike drawing of an apple or a vase of flowers. And that is not creativity. That's just the ability to draw that apple or that vase of flowers. Everybody is creative. You just have to find your thing. And so in that moment with those kids, it was helping them to help each other to figure out what it could be. And I would interject with a few little bits and added a few bits in there. And I always had a bit of theatre. I think you need a story, you need something engaging, you need something to get them sort of hooked in. So I came up with this character. There's this guy, Steve, and he's got a lorry load of these boxes, and he's turning up in about an hour. And we've got to figure out how to get it up there quick, sharpish. And the lorry is full of boxes. So, we can't just be doing it one by one. So we start to add a bit of context to the situation. And they get involved, and they're like, yeah, we've really got to help out Steve. So they, over time, figure out that what they're going to need is a conveyor belt. And then that's what we then designed and dived into, because they've now really understood the situation. They've asked all the questions about it. We've talked about the context in which it could occur and all the situations there. They're basically working towards that design specification without really knowing it. And they're absolutely and totally engaged and enthralled. And I was like, do you know what? This is it. This is the thing. This is what I need to do. And it's simply what schools don't do. They typically are like, we're all going to make this bird box, and right, we're going to dovetail joints because they're retro, and none of you have got enough time to make it, and it's going to be an absolute abomination. And then you've got to take it home, and your parents have got to say that they love it, even though they don't love it, and it goes on the shelf with all the other crap stuff that they've got to keep forever, and they absolutely hate it and want to throw it away, but they can't. Okay, so if we could focus more towards what problem are you solving? How are you solving it? What are all the ways we could solve this problem? What are all the questions, the good questions, not just questions, but good quality questions we can ask to dive in and find out everything there is to know about this? And if we could give that skill to young people so that they're not entirely transfixed on the ridiculous 12-year run out to those exams that get you to open that door to potential university, whether they want to go or not, the world would be a better place. We need more people who can solve problems. The problems right now for humanity are colossal. Energy crisis, food crisis, immigration. The problems are enormous, and we need people who can creatively solve those problems. And we're not going to get it if we just continually tell people you have to remember some information and put it on that page in a specific manner on that day, and based on that, we'll give you a number, and that will maybe or maybe not get you where you need to get to in your education journey. That's not a good use of our time anymore.
Whew, my goodness, you get wound up. I love
I'm
it.
passionate about it.
Yeah. So if I could summarize, give kids a problem and let them solve it.
Yeah.
That's the magic,
Yes,
right?
that's the magic. And give them a challenge. If you say to kids, bet you can't run around that tree, what are they going to do? They're going to run around the tree, aren't they? They're going to have a go. Some of them won't. Some of them are too afraid, okay? Because they're in this world of success is the only goal, right? 100% your test, A on the test. Failure is not an option. But actually, innovation requires failure. If you're not failing, you are not innovating. You're not pushing yourself hard enough. And you are learning when you are failing. You're rarely learning when you succeed. All of the learning happened in order to succeed at some point. Don't get me wrong, it's not all about failure. It's not about failing forever. But the innovation bits, my entire career has been built on failure. It's about figuring stuff out, doing things you didn't think was possible, and then figuring out how to make it possible. People used to think it wasn't possible for humans to fly. So much so that when the Wright brothers did it and they came back to this country, nobody would write it in a newspaper because it was so completely agreed. It is literally impossible. I don't care what you say. So what is possible now that is genuinely believed isn't, but through problem solving, through failure, through innovation, through striving and resilience could be possible.
Yeah, actually, and what it makes me think of in the current context is general AI, or AGI, I guess they call it, artificial general intelligence, right? There's a lot of people who just can't wrap their brain around that this could be possible, right? It's impossible to think that a computer could think like a human and, be as intelligent as we are. And I think that's one of those that it's going to happen, right? We may not be able to comprehend it, but it's going to happen, and it's going to happen even in my lifetime. I think it's not that far
I
away.
used to say to my students, I used to say to them, look, when I was a kid, the internet didn't exist. Like, it wasn't a thing. Like, we used to go outside and play outside. Like, I am largely the way I am because my parents just let me loose in the garden, and I would make a 20-meter long death slide in my back garden out of steel cable and pulleys and all sorts of madness. That's what used to exist. But so I used to say to the students, so if the internet didn't exist when I was a kid and does now, and I don't know, there's, of all the jobs on the planet, a very, very large proportion of those jobs are directly related to the internet. I used to say to them, so what will exist in your lifetime that doesn't yet? And how are you going to get ready for that world? But it's already here, obviously, with generative AI. That thing is already here. And so that exponential rise of technology, the rate of change of it is so colossal. And how does education keep up with that when it's still trying to get kids ready to go and work in a factory, turn up on time, wear your stuff all neat and tidy. When I blow this whistle, stop and stand still, remember all the things, do them all diligently, don't ask too many questions, don't disrupt my lesson, don't, all that stuff that's great for if you want little tiny obedient robots in a factory, but isn't massively useful if you want to solve some of the world's greatest challenges.
Yeah, I heard one of my other guests talked about one of the fears, because of the industrialization of education, right? Was that creative learning is not fast, it's not efficient, which is why, going through that curriculum, everybody must stay on the same page and do this at the same pace.
Yeah.
And, by year 3, you got to, checked off all these boxes. And when you go more free form and say, learn at your own pace, it's not as efficient. And so we don't allow kids the freedom to learn at their own pace, explore, find their own interests, and they discover things for themselves because it takes more time. Who's got time for that, right? Go, 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 go. Say the bell's going to ring and you better be done with your work. Turn in your paper because time is up, right?
Yeah. But why is the time up? The time is up because everything is working on that long runway towards the exams. And there are a lot of companies these days that are less interested in the exams and more interested in how you think. certainly when I was interviewing, it wasn't without the exams. I need, in an engineering environment, I need to know that you can do some maths and that you are capable. But actually, I was more interested in what is it you're doing in the evening and the weekend. And they're like, oh, I do this karting thing. Okay, cool. So tell me about karting. And they're like, well, I built the kart. Wicked. Okay, so tell me about when you built the kart. And then they tell me, oh, right, amazing. So then you're perfect. So, you didn't need any instructions to do that. You had to get on and do, and you had to solve the problems yourself because nobody was telling you how to do it. That's the kind of people that we needed in the innovation industry.
Yeah.
And every industry is different. I obviously am speaking from quite a specific area, but at the same time, every job requires people who can come up with ideas and who can solve complex problems. And so that's a generalist skill that we need to be able to give to children and to help them learn and develop from the very, very beginning and allow them to develop. I've got a secret project that I'd love to do at some point. Actually, it's not even that secret. I keep talking about it. I would love, if indeed it's the case that we want to be able to measure somebody's capability and we need to be able to give them a score, I genuinely believe that that it is possible to measure somebody's creative capability from a problem-solving point of view. And I would love to, at some point, work with somebody to bring that into the curriculum until such time that we realise that the exams are somewhat irrelevant. Because basically, you're just getting kids ready for a pub quiz that they might never actually go to. Like I had a massive debate the other day on LinkedIn about long division and whether it's relevant today or ever. And Eric, have you ever done any long division in your professional career?
Not without a calculator. I mean,
right? Why would you? Why would you put yourself through that? And
right.
then they tell me, oh, it's about problem solving. It's about critical thinking. I'm like, did you tell the kids that? Did you say to them, today we're doing problem solving and critical thinking through the lens of long division? Probably not. So if you hope that they'll kind of learn it by osmosis, they probably won't. And quite frankly, I think there are better ways to teach children problem solving and critical thinking than long flipping division. But there we go.
Yeah. No, it's I had a thought there for a second, and then you brought up long division, and it stepped.
Oh, sorry,
right on.
I thrown you off with that highly relevant topic.
No, it's okay. Oh, it's gone. It'll come back. All right.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. That's all right. I'll think of it at some point. Okay. Going to my notes here. So designing stuff and having kids solve problems, right? So there's a process to this, right? So how do you help kids understand the process of solving a problem, coming up with an idea, testing that idea? What's the process that you hope kids come away with? If you're not really giving them much instruction, right? You're guiding them. How do you get them to do a process?
So a lot of what we do involves no instructions or as little instruction as possible. But what we do is that we start every single one of our sessions. Everybody's got these little miniature whiteboards and a whiteboard pen. And we start every single session with a virtual problem, a thing, a question that they could ask. And we're asking them to come up with as many different ways to solve that problem as possible. And they don't need to be perfected. They don't need to be perfect. But at the ages that they are, so our students are aged, it varies every term that we do it, but generally from 7 up to sort of 15 typically. But I will go off and work with kids that are older or at university or whatever. But in the club, they're generally younger. So what we're typically doing is trying to exercise that capability of coming up with more than one idea. So we'll set them a challenge and we'll say, come up with at least three different ways of doing it. And they're usually, mad. Or there'll be this explosion, there'll be this robot, and it's fanciful stuff. But we're exercising that capability that they can come up with more than one idea. Because what I found is that typically when we're in a school environment and we pitch them something, they'll go, I've got my idea, and then they make their one idea, and then it doesn't work. And they go, oh, I'm not very good at this. And so that's not the case. What we want to move you towards is how many different ideas can you think of? And then of those ideas, which one could we work with? So within the materials that we've got here, within the problem, what of those ideas, which one should we have a go at, or which ones should we have a go at? And so we try and move them away from just this one solitary road to potential success or failure to multiple avenues, but with a bit of a decision matrix in there. And it's all very, very subtle at this stage anyway, because they're young. But within the materials that we've got and the problem that we've got, which of those ideas should we move forwards with? So we don't necessarily hammer home a process, again, because, I don't know, because the kind of kids that I get in my sessions, I reckon about 30% of the children that come to my class are neurodivergent in some method. They've got some special educational needs of some description. And so to give everybody the same process, again, is moving them back towards that sort of school thing of the one single runway. And actually, I want to enable each of them to find their own process in it within a bit of a method. So start off as many ideas as possible. Of those ideas, which ones do you think we should move forwards with, and which ones should we park for the future? Now, with the ones that are sort of halfway sensible, with the materials we've got, which ones can we start to make? And then we want to get them making miniature, small, micro prototypes, little bits and pieces, getting bits together to get that discovery phase happening, right? If you give people technology, they will use it. And it's not that technology is bad. I love technology, but I've seen it more often than not that people will sit on CAD for hours and hours and hours and hours and finally make something. They could be some weeks in, and then they've got to wait another week for prototyping to occur. And then they go and get that thing, put it together, and it doesn't work. How can we move that idea forward today? And we can move it forward today if I can put some things in your hands, which are, I don't know, well, this kind of stuff is all like cardboard, and there's lollipop sticks and dowels and bits of wood and
Yep.
stuff like that. You can tangibly get your hands on something today and move your ideas forwards and know by the end of the day, are we roughly going in the right direction, or is this not the way we want to go? And a lot of what we make, does look a bit rubbish, but we're using stuff that is basically borderline rubbish anyway, because I want you to be able to go home and carry on. This is not a thing where you have to be in this room with me to be able to do stuff. I'm trying to make inventors. I'm trying to make people who are creative, who love this stuff, who totally fall in love with it. And then the best messages I get are from parents saying, yeah, I had to tell them to go to bed. Yeah, it was like 9:30 at night and they were still going, but they've told me they're going to carry on tomorrow. And can you get me some more cardboard? Yes, I can. I'm sponsored by GWP Group. That's the aim. So at this stage, the aim is to get people absolutely inspired and passionate and falling in love with the thing. And as they get older, we'll move them more into a process. So when I do my half-term workshops on my place, because I've got the whole workshop facility and everything, we'll do much more of a more rigid process because we're trying to move through quite a lot in maybe 2 complete days. The weekly sessions are more sort of discovery based.
Yeah. So let's talk about the setup there, because I mean, you've got some equipment, right? This isn't, just cardboard and glue and, popsicle sticks. You've got a lathe and, right, what did you say, a laser cutter or something? I mean.
Oh, I have, yeah. No, so, okay, so there's a primary difference. So between the weekly kids club and what I do in like a short-term, like 2-day workshop or a 1-week workshop at my house, those two are different, intentionally different. So the weekly stuff actually takes place in an unbelievable workshop. There are these places called university technical colleges in the UK, and they are schools that you start at age 14, and they are fully equipped. They've got lathes, milling machines, they've got full machine shops, they've got welding, they've got race cars and all manner of stuff in there. They're unbelievable. And so my kids club takes place in one of those spaces. So they're surrounded by all the stuff, and which is great because when they ask you questions about things, I can show them tangibly some of the things we're talking about and some of the methods we might use. But actually, the weekly club tends to just use a glue gun, and I'm giving knives to children. I give knives to 7-year-olds. They're trained how to use them. But most of that stuff is quite rudimentary on purpose, because I want you to be able to move these ideas to your home. And in your home, you're not going to have probably a 3D printer or a laser cutter or any of the pillar drill, goodness knows, any of that stuff, right? What do you have? Well, people keep putting cardboard through your letterbox every single day when all these parcels are turning out from Amazon. If you know what to do with cardboard, you can make magic happen. You can make a monorail, or you can make a car, or you can make a automated biscuit dispenser. You can make all this stuff if you know what to do with it. So that's largely what happens. So the weekly stuff is fairly rudimentary on purpose. And then my intensive sessions, when they come to my place, will then level it up even more. And so then some of the students that have got a 3D printer, because some of them do these days, they'll bring that down, and I'll move them from just printing other people's nonsense, just printing Batman's head or just printing whatever somebody else made, to let's teach you how to actually make stuff yourself. Because the world doesn't need another 2 kilo print of Batman's face bobbing about in the ocean. What we need is kids who can solve problems, you know? So one of my students recently, this is wicked, he's got a better printer than I've got. Okay, I've got a wonderful Bamboo Lab X1 Carbon. It's glorious. He's got the AMS version of it, which has all the multicolors. But he's amazing. This kid is amazing. I met him through Dyson because there's a TV program in the UK called Engineers, and every TV episode they have this expert that comes on and they work with the kid. And so I was the expert, which was wicked. Season 6, episode 6, if you want to look it up. But now that kid's Kieran is my student. And so in this 2-day session, he came down to my place. Before this, he's just printing other people's stuff. And after 2 days with me, he is now creating his own little miniature business, designing products for other people. He's repairing people's vacuum cleaners, making components where they've broken or whatever, and repairing them. And he, at the age of 14, is now making money. He's selling his own ideas and making money, which is wicked. That's where I want to move him to. He's doing that. Guess where? In his own home. He doesn't have to be at my house anymore. He can do that. We now do online lessons because I figured out during the pandemic how to be able to do DT remotely and how to do it online, which was absolutely game changing. So now I've got students in Dubai. I've worked with kids in Hong Kong during the pandemic when they were locked down. I've got students all over the UK. And, you know, if you figure out the time zone bit, I've done lessons in, you know, waiting lounges at the airport and or in taxis and all manner of weird and wonderful places. But I know these kids are out there. These kids are unlikely to be the ones on the football pitch on a Saturday morning. You know, they're not the lads, but they're creative kids who just need a bit of guidance and a bit of direction. And there are millions of them on the planet, and I want to find them and help them. That's my aim.
Yeah, no, it's very, very cool. And this is, of course, why I invited you on, because I love this idea. I mean, there's so many things that resonate with me. It's active learning, it's problem solving, it's creativity. Yeah. And as you point out, it's a lot of the things that don't seem to really happen so effectively at school yet. You know, people like me, you were talking about hiring engineers. I was hiring software engineers for, a major part of my career. And I did the same kind of thing, right? I would kind of throw their resume aside, their CV, and say, all right, so tell me some problem you solved, right? Tell me the worst failure you ever had and what you learned from it, right? Tell me a horror story when it all just it was crashing down, and what was your role in getting out of that problem, right? Because I was looking for the people who didn't say, oh, somebody else stepped in and I turned the knob, right? No, what did you do, right? I was looking for the people who said, oh yeah, I had the idea, I jumped in, I was the one who came up with the solution, right? So yes, I was looking for the same thing. The other thing I learned to look for, and I think I see it in the way you describe this process, right? Get to something really quick. I call it fearlessness, right? Yeah. It's that, I'm not worried that it's not going to work. It probably isn't going to work, but I'm going to try something because I'm going to learn something from this first attempt, right? And I want to get really quickly to that revelation. Is it going to work? Well, if it is going to work, surprise me. Great. Let's go. Right. But I'm kind of expecting that it's not going to work quite the way I hope it's going to work. But it's going to give me a clue what to try next. I remember what I was.
Yeah. Oh, go for it.
I remember what I was going to tell you before. I actually made an attempt, and I had a startup here in Hong Kong, an EdTech startup, and we wanted to measure things like curiosity, right? How do you put a metric on that, right?
Oh, right. And,
So we were teaching kids, I say, these were 20 years old generally. They were out of college, most of them, out of university, but they were trying to change careers. They'd gone and studied, right, finance, economics, and then realized they really didn't want to work in a bank. They wanted to do something else. And so we were teaching them coding to try and open things up. But we actually tried to put a metric around curiosity. Was one of the ones that was really challenging to do, because you had to keep really watching for when did they go kind of beyond the the problem you asked them to solve, right? I gave you a very specific
Yeah.
kind of go build this thing, right? And then they come back with this solution that's because they kind of went down this rabbit hole and went, oh, this is interesting, I'm just going to keep exploring this even though it's kind of off the beaten path, right? And we wanted
Yeah.
to encourage that and go, yes, that's exactly what we want. We want you to go learn something we didn't ask you to learn just because you found it fascinating and you could kind of see some potential that there may be, other things I could do with this I don't realize yet, if I go learn that. And so we were looking for that. Another one we were looking for, of course, was persistence. The folks who, would wrestle a problem down to the ground and beat on it until they
Yeah.
won, right? That they didn't give up, they didn't bail too quickly. They said no, I'm going to solve this, and
Yeah.
they and they're late,
Well,
right? They were there after hours, or you came in the
oh,
morning and they
amazing.
beat you in. They're already in
Yeah.
the in the class because they're gonna fix this, right?
Well, that's when you know you've won, right? That's when you know you've won, because, and it not that it's a competition necessarily, but if for me the aim is to be able to help kids to be autonomous and to be those problem solving people and to basically be useful members of society. So much of social media these days isn't really useful. Is it creative? Borderline creative. A lot of it is just copying each other and doing stuff like that. But the people that are kind of heralded these days are largely heralded for nothing useful on the planet. And if you spend any length of time with anybody that is genuinely in need or genuinely struggles with various different aspects of life, it just makes you think differently. And I think helping people is a really, really important way of understanding the human condition and making sure that your life is useful. I don't know, does your life need to be useful? I feel like it does. And that year we spent in America was a sort of an experiential year out thing. It was madness. It was yeah. I mean, the first weekend we landed, Hurricane Katrina happened. So we went down to help out with the relief effort down there. And as an engineer, as an inventor, I can be useful. I built some beds, I built some shelves, I built some stuff like that. But largely in the face of that problem, the most important thing I could possibly do there was just to listen to people. And it's not something I'm brilliant at. My wife repeatedly tells me I have a habit of talking over people, so I apologise if I've done that in the last few minutes. But the most important thing to do there was just to listen to people, because they were all in pain and it was awful. But yeah, it makes you think differently. And then when you've got the kind of background that I've got and the creative talent that I've got, and you've seen the things that I've seen, it makes you want to, but for me, it makes me want to do something that can positively improve society. That's kind of why, that's my motivation. That's why I get out of bed and do what I do.
Yeah. That's why I do this podcast, man, because I want to help
Cool.
people and I want to share these stories. And yes, there's so many good things people are doing, creative, innovative things, and we need to get the word out so more people are brave enough to do these things and right, not accept that things are as they are and we can't fix it.
Yeah.
It
comes back to that failure thing again, and I think what it primarily comes back to, my wife she wrote this thing once, and I say it slightly differently every time, but I'll try and get it right. She says that if we are too afraid to fail, we become too afraid to try. And if we're too afraid to try, what are all the incredible inventions, opportunities, solutions that we're going to miss out on in society? And that fear of failure, that fear, and the root cause of it, I believe, comes back to people being laughed at or feeling like they might be laughed at and being made a fool of, and therefore they don't want to put their ideas out in case their ideas are measured to be stupid, and therefore they are stupid and they are a failure. And yet that is the very, very essence of what you need in those environments where you want problem solving, is people who are willing to go, I've got an idea, and not only have I got an idea, I'm going to make it, try it, build it, code it, whatever. And it's the ability to move somebody from that situation where I'm a failure to it failed. I didn't fail, it failed. and I'm willing to go again, or try it again, or build it again, or build it differently, or try something that you think is mental, but I think might just work, because some of those mental ideas are the ones that are actually the best ones. And the other bit about it is that the ideas breed ideas. And so sometimes you've got to have the crazy idea to have this other idea that you wouldn't have had if you didn't have that one. And then, it's a springboard to what the ultimate solution is going to be, rather than stopping at, I've got my idea, I'm going to make it, it didn't work, I'm a failure, I'm never doing that again. I'm not going to put myself out there.
Yeah. Well, I worked in the video game industry. I worked at EA, and we had this rule. We called it the no bazookas, right? So when somebody
Right.
did that kind of, this thing just popped in their head and, out it came, right? Nobody was allowed to load the bazooka and go, well, that was just stupid.
Yeah.
I just
Right.
detonated your idea.
Yeah.
And now you're cowering, going, oh, I'm sorry, I spoke up,
I'll
right?
never do that again. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
But in that culture, right, the guy who fired the bazooka, right, somebody would be all over him, just going, no, 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 no. You may not have gotten their idea, but no idea is a bad idea. No bazookas. And if somebody called you for bazookaing, it was that was a shame. You were shamed for bazooka.
Well, and
somebody else's
and that's
idea.
all about culture, isn't it? It's about what's the culture that you're trying to breed. And if you're trying to breed a place that's innovative, having those people that are just shooting people down left and right, well, that's a rubbish idea. That'll never work.
Right.
And it's I like the time when you get to kind of team the old timers, people that have done this thing forever, with the fresh blood, right? With the people who have never done it before, who are totally green, and often people that have done it and been there and seen that, and I've done it for 30 years, But yeah, you have. But fresh ideas are good, and now, what if you could combine some of that experience and that enthusiasm and put those things together? You can make new magic happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually heard a story once of a studio that would have these brainstorming sessions, and they would invite anybody in the building. So if you were in facilities, if you were, cleaning toilets, but
Right.
but if you wanted to sit in on this thing, and if you raised your hand and had something to say, it was okay, right? If you had this idea, I have an idea for a game, I have an idea for a feature, whatever. What if we could do this? What if we could do that? Anybody, the HR person, the finance person, you didn't have to be a game designer to have an idea. And
exactly right.
And so they created that culture of safety to say a good idea can come from anywhere. And apparently they got some very interesting ideas from people who were outside the normal design group, who would say something and somebody else would go, huh, you may not know how that works or what that means, but I do, and that could work.
Right. Ideas breed ideas. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the kind of culture that, that's so valuable.
Well, and kids will do that too, right? I think that is one of the beauty. I even had the chance today. I just went to a Montessori school here in Hong Kong, just to observe, to sit there. And it was so refreshing to be reminded again at the creativity and the brain power. Even these were very young kids; these were toddlers, basically. But in a Montessori environment, it's unstructured, right? So the kids decide what they want to do and how they want to do, right? But watching these kids, I mean, really focusing, they were so intent. They got this thing and they're going to try and connect them together, do something with it. And but it's like you could smell the brain, energy, right? These kids were discovering and trying new things, and they'd see somebody else doing something and they were studying it. What is he doing? Why is he doing that? Should I be doing that? So it was just great to be reminded that this is the way we're born, right? We're curious. We want to test everything. We want to touch things and play with them and handle them and shake them and bang them on something. And, can I break it? What is this thing, right? Does it pour? Does it, does it make noise? What is it? And I think schools tend to beat that out of us. In public school, right?
Yeah,
sadly
so.
Be quiet, face forward. Right? Yeah, and we've got to let kids express their creativity more and say, let them fail, let them learn from it. let them be fearless about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I did a session recently for 110 head teachers, and they loved it. So there's always a bit of chat. I always talk about what the future of education could look like, and how could we do things if we sort of ripped up the timetable, which obviously we can't necessarily do. But anyway, I like to, let's propose what could be. And then I follow that up with one of my workshops, which is, again, like what I do in the weekly session with children, but we're now doing it with adults. I've done the same thing with the Ministry of Defence. I've done it with Airbus. I've done it with other leadership teams at other companies. Turns out that adults are just big children, right? Most people do enjoy this kind of stuff at one level or another. And if not, it's about the team building, all that kind of stuff. Mm. But at the end of the session, what I get from teachers is they say, this was fantastic, this was magical, this is what school should be like, this is what we should be doing with the students. And yet the following day, they've got to go back to the rigid routine and the timetable, and we've got to do 35 minutes of this, and then we're going to do 35 minutes of that. And, life is about a series of projects, multiple projects. Some of them are interlocked, but they are all projects, and they are all a little bit of everything. And yet in our school life, it is, we're going to do this bit, and then we're going to stop it, and we're going to do something completely irrelevant. There's something else, and then we're going to do something else. And if you could take all those subjects and turn them sideways and see through the lens of all of them at the same time, that's project-based learning. And that's really what we should be getting kids ready for. It's those complex, interconnected problems, whatever they are, and how do you address them from a maths and a geography and a history and all those different perspectives. But everything is everything. Everything is multi-dimensional, and that's the real world. And we are teaching children to essentially follow a load of instructions, spit things specifically how I want you to put them on that piece of paper. Off you go to the real world. And this was very telling for me. I was at a university recently. It's a very, very highly respected university in the UK. And they said that they spend the first 2 years of their degree unlearning everything they've learned in their education. So the very education they require to open the door to get in there is the very thing they then have to undo for 2 years to get them thinking and creating and building in a better, more creative fashion. What? That's absolutely insane.
Yeah. Well, and on the employment side, it's almost the same story most of the time too, right? We hired a lot of fresh grads, and you spent the first at least year pretty much trying to get them to forget, how things worked in academics, and start thinking like an entrepreneur and a business person, and proper work ethics.
We need to basically
collaborating.
We need to connect it all up.
Yeah. Yes, we do. We do. So we're kind of getting towards the end here of our hour. Not that we can't continue if you want, but the one question I have for you that remains now is, where do we go from here? What can we scale what you've done? I know you're doing the online thing, but it seems like it's very kind of dependent on you, right? Your involvement. You're leading these workshops. You're even the online, right? There's like Zoom meetings and stuff that you're conducting. How do we break the dependence on you so this thing can scale?
Yep. I have plans for that. So yes, I have tried to push the boundaries of the 24 hours in a day. I don't do huge amounts of sleeping. However, yes, you're quite right. The better thing to do is how do I manage myself out of the situation? So there's a couple of things we're doing. Year before last now, I think, a local teacher got in touch with me, and fast forward to today, they're now my business partner in the education world. And so he sees everything from a teaching perspective, and he's much more logical and analytical than I am. And so he's very good at seeing what I do and being able to turn that into a framework that you could teach people to teach people, which is great. So he's helping me to do that. So he took the last 6 years of everything that I've done, because I've just kept making and creating every single week because I like things to be new. And he's basically sort of done this 60,000 foot picture of what I've got. And what we figured out is we've got 65 projects. They are not all completely there, but there's an awful lot of content. And so we're now picking through that and going, right, what should we start with? Where can we fill the holes in? And how do we turn that into a program? So that's one thing we're doing. There's two other particular things that we're doing. I'll say this one first. So one is that we're creating, out of those 6 years of directed content from me, we're creating these things that we're calling challenge packs. And so challenge packs are that, there are a million STEM kits you can already buy, these things you can get in like a toy shop or a supermarket or whatever. But all they are really is you're all going to make a cool thing, and here are the instructions to follow blindly, by the way, follow the instructions. And then you go, look what I made. And then the parent's like, wow, I can't believe you made that thing. I'm like, I can believe it. You followed the instructions. You went to school. So what we're working on is these things called challenge packs. And the idea is we're going to get you to be able to make something. There's some level of success in here, but there's a challenge to solve, a problem to solve. And there's all this world around it that we are not going to tell you how to do it. Right, we're going to give you some of the skills, some of the skill videos and stuff that you need to watch to be able to know how to put the bits and pieces together. But then it's up to you to then discover and explore. And then we want to get you back onto an online platform, sharing what you've done, where that culture is there of like success and like, I didn't even think of doing that. And then other people are teaching other people and inspiring other people. That's challenge packs. And we're going to launch with 12 of those. We're currently working on 3 of them at the minute. I've been beavering away all this weekend on a monorail system, which is pretty cool, which is largely based on this thing. But this is one of those many things that I got everybody to make the same thing. So we're trying to move away from that. And then we've got this other project, which came out of that magic moment I referred to earlier. So that magic moment of put a problem on the board, something really simple, something open-ended, and then helping walk children through that process. And so we're calling it the problem of the week. And what I found is this: if you tell children, right, it's 9:35, it's Tuesday morning, be creative immediately now, what are your ideas? And you don't know what sleep that kid had, what food they've had this morning, what their family life is, situation, any of that kind of stuff, right? But actually, if we said, look, we're going to do a problem over a week. I'm going to pitch you a problem on a Monday, and we're going to talk about it. There's going to be some videos, there's going to be a bit of background, bit of research or whatever. And then we've got a whole week to think about this problem. And then by Friday, can you imagine how excited those kids are to get stuck in? Can you imagine how many ideas they'll come with on that Friday, ready to make and build and create, and we'll clear out a whole afternoon, ideally the whole day, but whatever. And so it's called the problem of the week. And we're working currently on 52 of these challenges. And the aim is to give it away for free. Because in terms of scalability, like I want to have a generational shift. I want to have a step change in capability, because I'm an absolute visionary, right? I love standing up in front of one person, 10,000, 100,000 people and pitching them a vision and then getting people fired up about it. So imagine this. Imagine we've got 1 million young people who have experienced what it means to learn how to solve a problem, an open-ended challenge. And we've given them some skills and some process. There is some process to it. If we've given them those capabilities, what happens in 5 years' time? What happens in 10 years' time? What happens in 25 years' time if you've got those people fired up, inspired, capable, problem-solving individuals? And then what happens if you then scale that? So we've got a few different things we're doing with it. I'm doing a podcast. My own podcast is going to launch this year, which I'm quite excited about.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so that'd be cool. I love telling stories. So we're going to get some people on to tell some stories. We'll have to get you back on at some point, Eric. You can tell us all about computer games.
Okay.
And what we're doing with that, there's many things we're doing with that. But one of the things, we're going to be charting this sort of the story of me launching this thing. And so somebody that is related to the podcast, they run this organization and they feed 500,000 kids every single day in all manner of different situations. So what if we didn't just feed your body, but we fed your mind as well? What if we could, as the food is being given out, they're also getting this thing, which is this problem of the week thing. The logistics of it are going to be an absolute nightmare, but an incredible problem to solve. But that will be amazing. And then there's another guy we're working with who's got this organization. They work with over 10,000 different schools. And so they reached, I think, 650,000 kids last year with online STEM education. And so they are putting on a festival in the UK this October. So we're going to do one of my lessons there, and they're going to film it, and then we're going to package it up, and then the aim is to launch the problem of the week at that festival with a guided version of one of my lessons, and then here are the other ones, and off you go. And everything's supposed to kind of look quite cool and be quite fun, but very open-ended. you don't have to make anything if you don't have time to make anything. It should cost practically no money and be built basically largely out of rubbish. Whatever is around you, let's teach children to be resourceful. What have you got? What can you move forwards with? What are all the questions you could ask? What are all the contexts in which this problem occurs? And getting them to work through that process of problem solving through things that are fun and funny and engaging. And then, roll it out, give it away, see what we can do.
Yeah, no, I love the whole concept. And climate change is is one of these kind of global things that's also gotten a lot of attention. And so having kids really think about, right, what problem can I solve that contributes positively to the climate crisis, right? We get kids unleashed. Who knows what ideas, right, they'll come up with, what things they will invent. I saw something recently on something on a kid invented something, and I can't remember the details of it at all, but this was like a high schooler who invented something that, a bunch of people looked at it and went, oh my God, this is brilliant. This potentially has an impact, right? This kid who came up with it, but he was, he was uninhibited. He wasn't afraid. Go try this and then tell people I came up with this idea. And sure enough, it turns out it was actually a pretty wicked, smart idea. Adults are listening now. So, we got to get these kids, going. So thank you for what you're doing. It's great. This is what we need. And we need a lot more teachers and parents to also unleash these kids. Let them go and do this stuff, because this is it's natural, right? This is what we want to do. We're wired this way. If you get out of the way and let us, everybody can solve problems and be creative, as you pointed out earlier. Awesome.
Indeed, they can.
All right. Any last words? Last message?
Everybody's creative. Every single person is creative. You just have to find your thing. There's nothing you can't do, only things you can't do yet. Awesome.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for being on the show. And
thanks for having me, Eric.
Finally look forward to listening to your podcast. And if you want me to come on, if I can add value to that, you let me know. I'd be happy to reciprocate and be a guest.
Yeah, I want to dive more into your chat about curiosity. That there's something very interesting in that. That resonates with me massively. Yeah. Cool.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Cheers, Eric.
Over a period of 6 years, Ben has done about 65 different projects with these kids, and now he is packaging them up so that others can organize and deliver InventorClub workshops. It's brilliant. This is exactly how innovation works. You try something new or discover something that works by accident. And I remember a workshop I attended at Disney. This is years ago when I was in entertainment, and it was about the performing groups that worked out in the street, and they talked after every show about what spontaneous audience interactions had happened, or funny things that they hadn't planned on happened during the show. And the goal was to figure out how to make those things happen again, right? How to get that funny thing to happen in a future show. So this is exactly what Ben has done with these kids, right? He let them loose, and then he watched the magic happen and tried to figure out how to amplify that magic, how to create the environment for that magic to happen every week. Of course, I also love the concept of encouraging kids to explore multiple ideas, right, before they decide what to build, and the importance of allowing them to fail, right, and understand that, failure it's a necessary part of the process in getting to the best solution for a problem. All right, if you're enjoying this podcast, please subscribe and share. We have more awesome guests lined up with amazing stories of innovation and education coming up in this season. please reach out also if you have comments or suggestions. Hit that like button. Love that. All right, I'm Eric Byron. Thanks for listening to the Education Innovators Podcast. And for all of you education innovators out there, thanks for what you're doing. You are making a difference.